I grew up pretty close to the Sabine. I went to Sabine schools, kindergarten through senior year, but nobody really went down to the river when I was a kid. Parents were afraid that their kids would get into some mischief down there. They always said that nothing but snakes, dead bodies, and mosquitoes down in that river, and so we didn't swim in it, we didn't really fish in it. It just was always there. I had gone through college, was a young man looking for adventure, and one day I was driving into town on the same road I had taken hundreds of times before, and I happened to slow down as I was going over the Sabine River. And this, what I had always thought of this stagnant, kind of lifeless ditch, was actually flowing pretty swiftly. I saw a little twig just kind of bobbing along, and I stopped there and I watched, and suddenly the twig turned around a bend and was just gone. And I wondered what would happen if I had followed that twig, if I had seen what was just around the bend. And so a good buddy and I borrowed a boat, and we did. We spent 4 days traveling down the Sabine River, our hometown river in our backyards that we didn't know anything about, and we're really surprised by what we found. It was just a completely different world that was hidden to the rest of us up on dry ground. In particular, we were fascinated by the people living down on the river. A lot of them call themselves river rats, and some are living really primitively and simply the way that people lived in East Texas 100 years ago. You know, some of them didn't have electricity or running water. They would have big gardens. They would have trot lines to bring in enough catfish to feed them and their family for a week at a time. And Jake and I really fell in love with that hidden culture that we encountered, and it started to feel like home. We first did that project for our local newspaper, the Longview News Journal. An editor at Texas A&M Press, Shannon Davies, saw that newspaper series and asked us to keep going down the river all the way to the Gulf of Mexico. So we agreed, and something crazy happened on our first day of that second trip. We drove down and put on the Sabine River just below Toledo Bend Reservoir, the largest man-made lake in the American South. We put in the water, we were boating around, and throughout our previous trip, anytime that we would see people that looked kind of interesting or looked friendly along the banks, we would stop and get out and talk to them, hear their stories, hear what was so special about the Sabine to them. And so we've been boating down the river for about 45 minutes, an hour. Hadn't seen another soul, just really heavy green thickets on both sides of the banks, almost like a jungle right up to the water. And suddenly we come to this tall bluff, and there are like 4 people just sitting at the top of the bluff in a straight line in a row, just watching the river, almost like they were sitting down for an afternoon matinee or something. And so I wave, they wave back, they seem pretty friendly. So we decided to pull over to go talk to them, and like we always had before. And as soon as we were about to get out, we hear this pop, 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 and this plunk of the water behind us. Jake and I hit the deck, you know, like they're shooting at us. So Jake calls up and he says, "Hey, can we come talk to y'all?" And they didn't say anything. And so I yelled louder, "Hey, can we come talk to y'all?" And we hear, "Sure." And so I scramble up the bank, I introduce myself, and to my surprise, they had seen my newspaper stories, even though we were like, I don't know, a 3 or 4 hour drive away from our hometown. And this one guy, his name was John Flack. Like, he had a bunch of tattoos, and he was wearing his no shirt, jeans tucked into his work boots, sitting there with the gun in his lap. And he says, "I was wondering when we'd see you down here. We've been expecting you, and sorry for shooting at y'all. I thought you was my brother." And Jake had come up to, at that point, he was with me, and he kind of leans over and says, "I'm not sure that makes it any better." They had some good stories to tell and were wishing us on our way. And then another guy that was with them, this good old boy named Corey, laughs to himself and says, "Y'all got shot at your first damn day on the river." And sure enough, we did.